Let's get together, talk about the movies that we saw this week. We'll have discussions, talk film news, we'll laugh a lot and act like geeks. Sometimes we'll have a guest or two, sometimes it's just the two of us. Let's crack some jokes and tell some folks to come along and hang with us. Mike and Mike go to the movies. Mike and Mike go to the movies. Yeah!
You have chosen wisely.
Hello and welcome to the R-rated reboot of FilmBookCast. It's fucking FilmBookCast, the official podcast of FilmBook.com. My name is Mike Smith, and joining me, as always, is a man whose very existence is destined to bring about the apocalypse.
Mike Secretio.
How you doing today, Mike?
Good. Disappointed in myself I didn't curse, because I was gonna, and I forgot.
It's the R-rated reboot. You're legally required to curse as much as possible.
We're the podcast that fucks.
See, that's a good slogan. I like it.
We did it.
Fucking FilmBookCast, the podcast that fucks. That doesn't need any workshopping at all. I love it.
Nope.
Also, returning to the podcast for this one is the guy who sings our theme songs, Kyle Cullen. Welcome back to FilmBookCast, or fucking FilmBookCast.
Fuck yeah, motherfucker.
Yeah, there it is.
Sounds so good when you say it.
Right? Welcome back, Kyle, and credit to all of our theme songs goes to you. I usually just say, credit to all our theme songs goes to Kyle Cullen, but since you're here, I'll just say, yeah, it goes to him.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And if you want to contact us, you can send us an email at mikeandmikegotothemovies@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate and review the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts if you can, since it helps people find the show and makes us feel good about ourselves when we get those good reviews. If you've never listened to FilmBookCast or fucking FilmBookCast before, first we start with some film news and then move on into some discussions where Mike and I each discuss whatever piece of media we've been consuming lately. Of course, this time Kyle will be joining us. After that, we move on into our featured review, and today that's going to be the new movie directed by Neil Marshall, the R-rated 2019 reboot of Hellboy. Now, were you guys excited about Hellboy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it.
Okay, I feel like you guys are bigger Hellboy fans than most people in my life. So I'm
in that we are Hellboy fans.
Exactly, yes.
That we've seen the movies.
Yeah, I mean,
or read the comics.
Yeah, at least Kyle, you and I have a shared history with Hellboy. We saw Hellboy 2 in theaters together way back in the summer of 2008.
I don't remember.
Well, that happened. I can.
I believe you. I 100% believe you.
It did happen.
Did you make me watch the first Hellboy?
No, I think you watched it on your own accord. I feel like
okay.
I feel like when we saw Hellboy 2, you might have not seen the first Hellboy at that time.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think we had watched Hellboy 2, and then afterwards we watched Hellboy. I think I had seen Hellboy at that time, but Hellboy 2 was like the movie for me. Like Hellboy 1 I thought was like basically fine. Hellboy 2 I was like, fuck yeah, this is amazing. And Mike, you've actually read a lot of the Hellboy comics, right?
Yeah, I read the first 2 volumes of the omnibus editions.
Okay, now did that prepare you for this new Hellboy at all?
You would have thought so. Turns out it's based on the third omnibus, so...
Right.
I just missed.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to talk all things Hellboy later on in the episode. Right now, we're going to get into some film news.
Hi! It's time for... What? It's time for... It's time for... Film news! Hi! It's time for... What? It's time for... It's time for... Film news! Film news!
All right, it's time for film news here on FilmBookCast. So we just did an episode last week, so we don't really have a ton of film news to talk about today, except for a bunch of Disney things, which seems to be the case since they own like 40% of the industry now.
Yeah.
But, of course, a lot of the discussion over the past week was kind of the big unveiling of Disney+. Right, so we've talked about Disney Plus a lot over the past year or so, right? It's going to be Disney's new streaming service that's kind of designed to compete with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, or not really Hulu because Disney owns most of Hulu now, because of course they do. But it's designed to be the next big thing in Disney, and they're stocking it full of Marvel TV shows and Star Wars TV shows, and they're doing a couple of live action remakes of stuff, and they're doing some original things on there too. But for the most part, it's like branded Disney content that they know people are going to want to watch, and they're making it exclusively available on Disney Plus. So yeah, this is going to be kind of a big deal, and it was kind of announced this past week, kind of the full lineup of stuff that's going to be available at launch, plus the price point, which is going to be $6.99 a month, which is about half of what Netflix costs. and it will launch on November 12th. Now, Mike, you've made your feelings on Disney Plus explicitly clear over the over the past year or so on the podcast.
Yes, I'm gonna pirate the things probably.
Yeah, you're not. I mean, it's you're in a weird position because it sounds like you want to watch these shows, but you don't want to support Disney. Basically, is that basically is what this is?
Yeah, I want to watch the shows, but they have made it too painfully obvious that they're holding these shows hostages in order to get people onto their streaming service because they own media now. So, I'm just gonna dust off the old skull and crossbones and eye patch and go find them. You know?
Right, that's fair. But I mean, isn't that like that's every streaming service though, right? That's like, yes, this show is only available on Netflix, like Stranger Things, so you have to have Netflix in order to watch Stranger Things, right?
Yeah, but it's a now thing, right? Netflix wasn't always like that and has slowly progressed into that, and it is what it is now. Disney is starting there, and it feels dirtier to me in some fashion. And it's the powerhouse of Disney flexing its muscles on us as mere consumers. So fuck off, big powerful corporation.
Fair enough. I mean,
you know,
he says as we're breathlessly awaiting the release of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, yeah, you're right.
All right.
There's no response. You're not wrong.
Fair enough. Kyle, are you excited for Disney Plus?
Yeah, for the most part. I don't want to pay for it. So I already pay for it. I have the Netflix premium account because I have so many people that use my account, like my mom, both
Yes.
my sisters, my fiance, my brother. Everybody uses it, and I was talking to my sister about it, and she goes, "Are the Disney Channel original movies going to be on there?" I'm like, "If they are, will you pay for it?"
Actually, they will be. About 100 Disney Channel original movies are going to be available on Disney Plus at launch.
All right, then I will have Disney Plus because my sister's got it.
You know, with that new piece of information, never mind.
You're all about it? You want to get it?
I'm all in.
Want to
If
get
I
in
can
on
watch
your,
HE double hockey sticks.
If I can
got
watch
me.
Luck of the Irish whenever I want,
Eddie's $1 million cook-off, baby.
dude, there it is.
Have my $6.99 a month.
All right, so it sounds like, you know, it sounds like there's enough content here that, like, conceivably anybody who wants Disney Plus will probably get it. Because, again, it is a pretty cheap price point. It's $7 a month, or $70 a year, basically, I think is the yearly price. You know, that's, I mean, again, it is cheaper than Netflix. It's cheaper than most streaming services. I think it's a little bit more expensive than, like, Shudder, maybe. That's the only one I can think of. It's the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
But, like, let's say, okay, Mike, if somebody got Disney Plus, like, say if I got Disney Plus and I gave you my password, like, would you use it? Is that kind of where you're at with that?
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
yeah.
that's
I'm just not going to pay for it myself.
fair enough. All right, hey, that's fine. That's totally fair. But anyway, yeah. So Disney Plus, November 12th, this is coming out, and you know, it's going to have a bunch of Marvel stuff. Obviously, it's going to have a bunch of Star Wars stuff. They just screened the Star Wars Celebration was this past week, and we'll talk more about one of the big Star Wars Celebration things in a bit. But they also screened a lot of footage from The Mandalorian, which is going to be their first live-action Star Wars TV show, the very first live-action Star Wars TV show ever. Which is pretty nuts. That's one of those things where, like, you know, there was a rumored live-action Star Wars show back in, like, the mid-2000s that George Lucas was producing, and it was rumored that he had, like, 100 scripts in development, and I followed the development of that show breathlessly. And it was going to be about, like, one of the rumors was that it was going to be about, like, a bounty hunter, kind of like a Boba Fett figure, and that's what The Mandalorian is now, which is, like, kind of interesting. But at the footage that they screened, like, I read some of the descriptions of what it was. It sounds insane. It sounds like, you know, Werner Herzog is playing a human character in the show. He's not voicing an
What a
alien.
twist.
Werner Herzog is there as a human who is in control of, like, a stormtrooper fleet or whatever, and he's, like, you know, the head of this, like, kind of disorganized branch of the stormtroopers that, like, maybe after the fall of the Empire or whatever. I don't really know. It sounds awesome. IG-88 is in it, and apparently he's being voiced by Taika Waititi.
Which I can't wait for.
It's Korg all over again.
That has sold me on The Mandalorian. Like, I like the idea of The Mandalorian. I thought it'd be cool, like, not focusing on some new characters. And they were like, "Oh, IG-88's back." I'm like, "Oh, I know who that is." And, like, Taika Waititi's voicing him. I was like, "Oh, fuck, I'm watching this show."
Yeah, so it sounds like it could be really cool, and it's going to be set right after Return of the Jedi, like shortly after Return of the Jedi, which is a period of time that isn't really explored that much in the Star Wars universe. So yeah, I definitely can see that. And plus, it kind of fills that gap that, Mike, you've been talking about for a while, where it's like this is mostly new characters and new stories.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not set in a period of time that we don't I mean, it is set in a period of time that we don't explore that much, but it is still set within like the parameters of like between episode 1 and 9.
It's not the Old Republic, but it's stuff that's not been covered before.
Exactly, yeah. So I think The Mandalorian could be a pretty cool addition to the Star Wars universe, and you can only watch it through Disney Plus. And apparently, it's not going to be a full season dump kind of thing. It's going to be like a weekly kind of like 10-episode series, like how TV shows are traditionally done, but before Netflix came along.
Lost some interest.
Yeah.
You would rather just have the binge-worthy things. I think I get that if you do the weekly thing, that means people have to pay for more months of Disney Plus in order to watch The Mandalorian. So I get that on a business level, but also I prefer the weekly format. Like we're having with Game of Thrones right now, where you have this kind of shared thing that everybody can watch together simultaneously, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. It just also is another one of those. The company that controls media gets to decide how media is a thing now. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. But so Disney Plus is going to be big, and there's going to be some stuff that's good about it, some stuff that's bad about it, but also a new thing that is being added to Disney Plus, a new Marvel show. We've covered that they're going to do a new Loki TV show, a new Scarlet Witch and Vision TV show, which, by the way, is called WandaVision.
The worst fucking name.
Wait a minute. The show is called WandaVision?
Yes, it is. One word.
What the fuck? That's so dumb.
It's a very dumb name. It's a very dumb name. But yeah, so they're doing a Loki show, they're doing WandaVision, and they're doing Falcon and Winter Soldier. And now you can add one more to the Marvel list. They're doing a Hawkeye TV show with Jeremy Renner reprising his role as Hawkeye. And supposedly it'll feature Kate Bishop, the female Hawkeye, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I'm into it.
I wonder if they will acknowledge. I mean, I guess they have to, right? It's the actual actors reprising their roles. How the Marvel movies never ever acknowledge the existence of the TV universe,
right?
Because Kate Bishop is a character people want, I think, in the next phase.
Right.
Post Endgame stuff. I hope she doesn't get trapped in the Disney Plus show.
I think I saw an article on Facebook today saying that these new Marvel shows on Disney Plus are going to tie into the movies.
Yeah, I think Kevin Feige was saying that, yeah. And he also said that about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which it did for a little while, and then it stopped. And he also said that about the Netflix shows, which they sort of did at the beginning, where they were like, oh, the Battle of New York happened, and then they never mentioned it ever again. So, I mean, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think this is a unique opportunity for them to really explore some new storytelling avenues for these characters. Because the Marvel Universe has been a blast, and I've been rewatching all of these movies over the past month or so in preparation for Endgame, and I'll talk about that big rewatch that I've been doing when we review Endgame in a couple weeks. But I think that rewatch has really emphasized for me a lot of the strengths and a lot of the limitations of what the MCU movies are capable of, because the interconnected universe thing is great, but then it kind of it's weird, because then you have like characters that are leads in some movies and then supporting characters in others, and so a lot of stuff happens off screen in between movies, right? Like the entire Scarlet Witch Vision romance like happens in between Civil War and Infinity War, right? And so when you get to Infinity War, like I think it works because there's hints at it in Civil War and even a little bit in Age of Ultron. And I think it ultimately works in Infinity War, partially because the actors are doing a pretty good job at selling it. But I think if there was like a Scarlet Witch Vision TV show before Infinity War came out that explored that a little bit more, I feel like you might actually care more about what happens to them in Infinity War as a result of that,
Hopefully we eventually get a West Coast Avengers, because that'd be fuego.
Yes, so West Coast Avengers headed by Hawkeye and doing his thing or something like that. Like that'd be pretty sick. So I think a Hawkeye TV show could actually be really cool, because I think Jeremy Renner is great as Hawkeye and has been severely underused in these movies up to this point.
I don't know. He's got a new haircut, so watch out.
He is
apparently he's got a tattoo as well. That's pretty cool.
He is Mohawkeye now, guys.
God.
Is it too late to quit this podcast?
It's the John Mulaney joke where he's wearing glasses to show that time has passed.
Yes. And actually, in one of the trailers for Endgame, there's a shot of Hawkeye like teaching his. I think it looks like his daughter how to shoot a bow and arrow, and people like theorize like, "Oh, is that Kate Bishop?" But now that Kate Bishop's going to be on the TV show, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, that'd be weird. But...
That would be odd, but yeah. So anyway, Hawkeye getting his own TV show on Disney Plus. I'm into that, and I think it could be pretty cool to have like a full Jeremy Renner like run as Hawkeye for like 6 episodes or whatever it is. Because it does sound like what these shows will be, which I'm actually pretty happy about, is that they're not going to be like ongoing shows like the Netflix shows were. It'll be like 6-episode miniseries based on these characters and that kind of thing. And maybe if you want to do more, like you can do a sequel or something down the line. But like for the most part, these will be like standalone adventures, like 6 episodes, 8 episodes, whatever, and that'll be it. So you get like a complete,
I like the idea of that. Actually.
Yes, so you get a complete story with these characters, and then you can move on. So it's kind of like just one long movie, sort of. Which I always hate. Which I always hate when showrunners say that, like, "Oh, it's like we're envisioning this as one long movie," but like I feel like in this case, it almost sort of is.
Yeah, it's like a one-off comic book.
Yeah, because like fans have been fucking asking for like solo movies for these characters. I'm like, here's your fucking TV show. It's a movie.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so Hawkeye getting his own TV show. I'm pretty cool with that. And then finally got one last thing, guys, and we kind of referred to this earlier. Star Wars Celebration was happening this past week. A lot of Star Wars content over the last few days. Of course, we talked about The Mandalorian. And there was a big panel for Star Wars Episode 9, which I watched. It was being live streamed. And I was at work, and I kind of had it open in a tab while I was doing other stuff, hiding it from my boss. And
Nice.
and so I was watching the panel, and it was a fine panel. They brought out Billy D. Williams, and they brought out Anthony Daniels, and they brought out most of the new cast. Adam Driver was not there because he's doing a play in New York, I think, at this time, with Kerry Russell, who was also in Star Wars Episode 9, so she wasn't there either. But most of the new cast was there, and then they showed the trailer for Star Wars Episode 9, which unveiled the title for the movie. Now, I think me and Kyle should give our brief thoughts on the trailer, but we can't really go into specifics because, Mike, you have not watched the trailer, right?
Correct. Yes, I am going to do my Unsullied thing and avoid this troll. Yeah, I'll try to avoid this trailer for as long as possible.
Interesting. So, I mean, I'm curious how far you can take this. Like, honestly, I would love it if you actually made it all the way to December without having seen a single frame of Star Wars Episode 9.
When does Avengers come out? Because it's going to play before that.
Well,
so.
yes, it is.
What is it? I have a friend who also does the Unsullied thing, and he takes it as far as putting his head in his lap, covering his ears and his eyes.
Yes.
When he'll if he sees like Lucasfilm come up, he might even walk out of the theater.
I remember when we saw Rogue One, I think it was Rogue One, and we saw it with him, the friend you're referring to. The trailer for Spider-Man: Homecoming came on, and he literally like jumped over the seat in front of him and dashed out of the theater once he realized it was.
That's amazing.
And so it doesn't sound like you're as insane with the Unsullied thing as that, Mike.
Normally not, but I kind of want to be challenged by this one because it seems like it will be a more rewarding experience to go in completely blind.
Yeah.
Just from the questions you asked me before we started recording about the trailer. So I don't know. Maybe we'll try to cover my eyes or do something or leave the theater. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
If you do see the Lucasfilm logo come up, leave the theater. Because if it's a loud mix in your theater, it's gonna you will be sullied.
You will be sullied. But so me and Kyle will just give our brief reactions on the trailer then real quick. Kyle, what do you think of the Star Wars Episode 9 trailer?
Oh God, it's Star Wars, and it made me happy. It just made me smile real big, and just there's a couple shots that I thought were amazing and made me wonder where they're going to go. And just my initial reaction to the trailer was just bliss.
Fair enough. Now I also very much liked the Star Wars Episode 9 trailer, which also unveils the title of the movie. I think it would be very difficult to have a trailer that didn't. And it was called Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, I liked that title as it was unveiled. I thought it was a cool reveal, because they didn't say what the title was going to be before they showed the trailer. They just showed the trailer, and then at the end of it, the title came up. And then there was a certain audio clip that gave a hint at what is to come. And I will not say any more than that because Mike is being unsullied right now, and I don't want to ruin that for him. If he can manage to not know this. And I think everybody who's listening here who has watched the trailer knows what I am talking about. If Mike can manage to avoid this until December, I will be so proud. I don't
might have to get a new co-host. I think his head will explode in the theater.
Oh my God. The pressure's on now.
Yeah. So anyway, the trailer ends in such a way where it's like, holy shit, how can they possibly be doing this? And
Is it actually a Shrek 5 sequel?
It's Shrek 5. Yeah, it's.
I guessed it. I got it right.
Yep, you got it right. That was 100% on the money. It's Star Wars Episode 9: The Rise of Shrek. But yeah. So anyway, what do you guys think of the title, The Rise of Skywalker?
Like I was saying before we started recording, I had a friend who posted online that it's at the end of every trilogy. First, it's Revenge of the Sith, and then Return of the Jedi, and now Rise of Skywalker. And that kind of like, since this is the Skywalker saga, that kind of, it feels like it's tying everything together.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see what exactly Rise of Skywalker means, because it could mean a couple things.
Right. I mean, and that does tie in, actually, the way that structured, those titles are structured. You're kind of right, where, George Lucas would always say about the prequel trilogy that it sort of acts as, like, poetry with the original trilogy, like it rhymes, sort of. And you can make fun of that all you want, and I have in the past, but like, but I think the way that the prequel trilogy calls back to the originals is really interesting in certain ways. And then there's the ways in the sequel trilogy that do the same thing, and I feel like the sequel trilogy isn't as successful in some aspects of that. In some aspects, it's really good. But I do like the way there's a nice symmetry there, where it's Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. Like, I like that. It's nice. Well, Mike, what do you think of the title, The Rise of Skywalker?
I think it sounds pretty cool. I just am like nervous. I'm nervous because The Last Jedi goes to such great lengths. I mean, as someone who hasn't seen the trailer, right? I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Goes to such great lengths to begin to work to distance Rey and these new characters from the Skywalkers, right? Like, the whole thing is like kill the past if you have to, like that whole thing.
Yeah.
That like, if Rey turns out to be a Skywalker, what was even the point? Fuck it. Which is make franchises with new filmmakers that just undo every other previous movie. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I would just be mad. Plus, like, friend of the show, Rian Johnson, great guy.
Yeah, totally.
That was something that I thought of after I saw the trailer. Initially, Bliss, I was super excited at Star Wars, but then I was like, oh man, I hope they don't overcorrect. Like, because there were so many people who were upset with Last Jedi. I mean, I loved it.
I think you're overemphasizing how many people were upset with The Last Jedi. It
feels like all of my friends didn't like it.
That's
a very loud.
Yeah, the very loud portion of it. I mean, it is a divisive movie, and I know a lot of your friend group was not a big fan of The Last Jedi. I loved it, and I think out of our portion of the friend group. I know we're getting like too personal for like an actual film podcast, but like out of our portion of the friend group, I feel like most people enjoyed it. Yeah. But like most of the people that I know in my life tended to like it. But there were definitely people that I know who didn't, and it has been a very divisive Star Wars movie, probably the most divisive Star Wars movie since Empire Strikes Back, which is now regarded as the best Star Wars movie, like almost universally. So,
exactly.
Whatever. But who's to say what that means? But. So The Rise of Skywalker, I think with Abrams coming back, there is a little bit of a danger of him kind of walking back some of the stuff with The Last Jedi, but I think he's too smart to do something like that. I think J.J. Abrams, as a filmmaker, is a lot of things, but he's not dumb. And I think he knows that, a lot of people did like The Last Jedi, liked what they did with that character, and with the whole kill the past, all that stuff. And so I don't know. I am very curious what The Rise of Skywalker means. I don't think it, like, to my mind, it didn't mean that, like, when I saw that title, it didn't mean that Rey was a Skywalker, right? Like when I saw that, and I figured it could mean anything. It could mean that like Luke comes back as a Force ghost and does Force ghosty things, or like, or it could be referring to Kylo Ren, who is Ben Solo / Leia Organa, technically a Skywalker. Could be referring to him, or it could be referring to, I saw some fan theory posted around that like, by the end of the movie, Rey will have kind of created her own new version of the Jedi, and it will be called the Skywalkers, and that will be what that title means, or something along those lines.
That would that would create the symmetry of Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi, Rise of the Skywalker, if it becomes an order or something like that. So yeah, it was just like I first, because all I've seen is like the title card frame or whatever.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh no, this was my original reaction. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. So I am very curious to see to see your journey into not watching these trailers.
I really hope you can do it. I really hope so.
I know
I'm
the
rooting
pressure's
for
on
you.
now, and like I feel like you weren't planning on like skipping the trailer in the theater now, but now I feel like you might be.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna, but like I might now. Probably will, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just cover your ears, close your eyes when you see the Lucasfilm logo, and see how that goes. I am real curious.
Run out.
Well, unless it's like the last trailer, I don't want you to miss any bit of Avengers Endgame. You know what I mean?
I was going to say I could just stand in the hallway and listen, but that'll defeat the purpose.
Yeah,
Since apparently it's an audio thing.
Yeah. All right. Star Wars Episode 9. We're very excited for it here on FilmBookCast. It's going to be the final film in the Star Wars trilogy that we have enjoyed over the past few years. So, yeah, Star Wars. We'll see how that trailer goes, and I'm going to chronicle Mike's journey as an Unsullied
Yes.
for
I'm
this
looking
trailer.
forward to it.
All right. I think that about wraps up our film news, guys. Let's move on into our discussions.
Watch this. These are my discussions. Just when I thought I said all I could say, my buddy and I talk about movies we see. These are my discussions. There is so much to see, you and me. So we're gonna talk about movies for our discussions.
All right, it's time for our discussions here on FilmBookCast. Mike, we'll start with you. What do you have to discuss with us today?
So you sprang this episode on me. I'm going to pretend you surprised me. And we only had...
We logged in today, and you were all prepared for the Nicolas Cage podcast, and I was like, psych, we're doing Hellboy.
Yeah, what? Good thing I saw it.
Yeah.
But we only had 1 week, so I didn't have my usual time to wait 2 weeks and then watch a bunch of movies the day before. So I've only seen one thing since our last episode, and that is the Talking Heads concert movie called Stop Making Sense.
Okay. This is generally considered one of the greatest concert movies of all time. And it's directed by Jonathan Demme, who went on to make Silence of the Lambs and Philadelphia, a bunch of great movies, and who just recently passed away a couple years ago.
Wow, look at that. I didn't even have to go to Wikipedia. You did it for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, if you're a Talking Heads fan or a fan of concert movies in general, it's such a weird subgenre of movies. I feel like, you're just going to sit in a theater or at home and just like watch a concert. And the best ones usually do something interesting with that. And Stop Making Sense, for one, it's got the big suit, iconic moment.
Of course.
When David Byrne comes out in the big suit. But, David Byrne is a crazy human. And he comes out with this very interesting staging where it's, the stage of the first song, it's completely bare. There's no set. All the lights are on. It's just him in a boombox, and one song at a time they build the set around them, or build the stage around them, and it ends in this crazy, David Byrne way with the big suit, and that's awesome.
Right.
And music's great, and just it's a good time. And I watched it purely because I had heard the song "Once in a Lifetime," I think, right?
It's a song I refer to all the time.
Yes, yeah, and I heard that song on the radio, and I thought of you going, my God, what have I done? Like you do all the time.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, that's, and then I remembered there's a really good version of it in Stop Making Sense, and I went on YouTube and found that version.
You may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. You may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Letting the days go by, let the water hold me down. Letting the days go by, water flowing.
And then the whole thing's on YouTube, like was one long, a single video. It's not each track. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to watch this. And it's great. It's good stuff. If you're into Talking Heads, if you're into concert movies, definitely you can't miss Stop Making Sense.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about Stop Making Sense is it's even if you're not a big Talking Heads fan, I just think it's still just a really awesome concert movie to watch. Even if you only know like a few Talking Heads songs, I feel like you can watch that movie and be like, that was an amazing concert. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like The Last Waltz. Even if you're not like a band fan, you can still watch that, even though it's like fucking 4 hours long. All the director's cut of it is.
Yeah.
And still appreciate it as a concert,
Yeah, because it feels very cinematic, and there's a lot of like unique stuff happening in those movies.
And there's full band choreographed dancing. Like, what more do you need?
I love it. Yeah, it's a great movie. Stop Making Sense. And apparently the entire thing is on YouTube right now, so definitely worth checking out. All right, I have a few discussions to mention today. First, I want to talk about the new remake of Pet Sematary, which came out a couple weeks ago. Now, I think like 2 episodes in the podcast ago, I talked about the original Pet Sematary, which I watched because the new one was getting like solid reviews. And I was like, Not that excited about the new one, but then I heard like pretty good things out of South by Southwest. So I was like, hey, I'll watch the original. Ended up liking the original quite a bit. I thought it was a fun, like, little campy exercise, of course, based on the Stephen King novel, which you said was like one of the most terrifying reads you've ever had in your life, right?
Yeah, as an 8th grader, yes.
Yes. And Kyle, you're not a horror guy, so I'm assuming you have like no familiarity with Pet Sematary.
Nope.
Fair enough. Anyway, this new remake directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer, and I thought it was okay. You know, I feel like, you know, the South by Southwest reaction was pretty strong, and then after it actually came out, the more reviews started coming in, and like that Rotten Tomatoes score started to go lower and lower. And so I saw this movie, and the first half is like pretty much beat for beat the same thing as the original movie.
Wow.
And then it takes one major change that like really affects the back half in a different and pretty interesting way. And I feel like I'm going to spoil what that change is. Okay? Is that cool?
How dare you?
Fine by me.
Well, yeah, Kyle doesn't care. But I'm for the listeners at home, I'm going to spoil what the change is in Pet Sematary 2019. And it's actually in one of the trailers, so it's not that much of a spoiler because it was used as part of the marketing. But so you've read the original Pet Sematary. You've seen the original movie, right?
Yes.
So you know that the plot of Pet Sematary is this family moves to this kind of remote location near a road that happens to have trucks that fly by at 100 miles an hour all the time. It's just
Blasting AC/DC.
Yes, and that was the
Ramones.
Ramones, actually.
The Ramones. That was it.
And, yeah, so it's blasting the Ramones, 100 miles an hour. And in the original movie and in the original book, what happens about halfway through is that there's the two kids in the family. The youngest kid, the boy, Gage, wanders off into the road, gets hit by the truck, and dies.
Yes.
And so the plot after that is that they take Gage into the Pet Sematary, bring him back to life, but he doesn't come back the same. Sometimes dead is better and all that, right?
The ground was sour.
Right. So in this movie, it looks like it's about to do that, but it pivots, and instead the older daughter is the one in the road that gets hit by the truck. And that drastically changes like the back half of this movie, because it's a whole different ballgame at that point. You know, in the original, like Gage is like I think in the book Gage is like literally an infant.
I think he's like a toddler. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He's like less than 2 years old or something. In the movie, I think he's like 5 or 6. Because I think they had to age it up just because like it would be very difficult to shoot that in the 80s kind of thing. And in this movie, Gage is like 2 or 3 years old, and the daughter is probably like 8 or 9. But like having it be like an older child like that, it's interesting, but it's also like we've seen a lot of movies with like creepy kids before. You know, that's not like it's not like a new thing. But I think what kind of separated Pet Sematary a little bit was that like it's very rare that you get a really creepy baby. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And so so this movie does make that change, and it changes a lot of things that happen in the back half of this movie. But like ultimately, it feels still kind of redundant because it's just the same thing as several hundred other movies that we've already seen. Literally, I mean, earlier this year I saw a movie called The Prodigy, and it was like the same thing. It was, So it feels like the changes that it makes. Like, it could have gone further with those changes to, like, truly make this a really unique take on the material. But there are, like, some okay scares in here. The ending is, like, very bleak, which I liked. John Lithgow is doing pretty solid work in here in the Fred Gwynn role from the original. He's the guy who says sometimes dead is better, and, like, he's pretty good at it. And it's, I didn't like this movie as much as the original, but it does have its merits here and there. And it does end with a cover of the Ramones' Pet Sematary theme song. Which is all I could have asked for. I mean,
that's pretty dope.
Short of just playing the Ramones' Pet Sematary theme song, like that would have been my ideal situation.
What if it was entered in the Ramones end credits over a hand-drawn animation cinematic universe?
Spider-Man: Homecoming, Shazam, Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
I would have loved that. I would have loved it. But yeah, so they do the Ramones cover. There's actually there's a Ramones shout out in the movie too, which was I only caught this because I had just watched the original. But in the original, the song that is playing when the truck driver is ramming down the street is "Sheena is a Punk Rocker" by the Ramones.
Yeah.
And in this movie, the truck driver is not listening to a song, but he's texting while driving. And the text is coming from somebody named Sheena. And I was like, hey, Sheena is a punk rocker. That's
pretty cool.
That's a little clever shout out. I like that. But anyway, so that is the Pet Sematary remake. It's fine. I don't think it's as good as the original, but it's still it's an okay time. And then saw another movie this past weekend called Missing Link.
You must understand, my objective here was to find proof of you. My name depends upon it.
Proof? What kind of proof?
incontrovertible evidence of your existence to prove my doubt was wrong. Like hair samples, a tooth, nail clippings, feces.
Well, I have all those things. That seems like a fair deal.
In that case, why not? I shall get you there, to the place you belong. And in return, you'll get me to mine. Oh, yes. I'll prove the existence of not just one, but an entire evolutionary branch of missing links. Imagine the headlines then.
Oh, well, you really mean that? You're going to take me?
Of course. I give you my word.
Okay, what is it?
What?
Your word.
No, it's a figure of speech.
Sounds good. What is it?
The word, my dear fellow, is trust.
Oh, so you want the poop now?
Oh, later we'll be fine.
Which is the new movie from Leica Animation Studios. And I am a huge Leica head, guys. I believe I've mentioned that in the podcast before. I'm a huge fan of their movies. Kubo and the Two Strings made my top 10 that year. I think I saw the movie with you, Kyle, actually.
Yeah, the movie was fantastic.
Yeah, Kubo and the Two Strings is great. This one's directed by Chris Butler, who was the co-director of Paranorman, which is a movie that I love also.
Also
such
a
a good
great movie.
Yes. So yeah, Paranorman's great, and this movie, the animation in this movie is amazing. Like I think Leica always outdoes themselves with the animation, the stuff, the level of detail and attention that goes into making this movie. It's like a sight to behold. Like it's really that's the main reason to see this, because the movie itself is like a solid, charming little adventure. I don't think it's as good as most of Leica's stuff, but it's an enjoyable little time. I enjoyed the experience of watching it. I loved watching the animation, but the story itself was I've seen this like a million other times before, but I enjoyed it. It's not it's not bad by any means. The movie's about a 1930s era explorer played by Hugh Jackman who discovers a Sasquatch played by Zach Galifianakis, and they go on a journey to bring him to Shangri-La where he can be with his kind. And it's influenced by the kind of adventure movies like Indiana Jones and all that kind of stuff. Zoe Saldana's in this movie. Emma Thompson's in it. Stephen Fry, Timothy Olyphant. And as a story, it kind of just is ambling along. It has a very low key kind of charm to it. And I think it's occasionally pretty clever. And the movie has a few interesting beats. It criticizes colonialism a lot, which I thought was really interesting for this kind of movie to do. But I think it's definitely on the lower tier of Leica movies. But it's still an enjoyable ride. I had a good time.
It's Leica. You're gonna like it.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. I think
that's their slogan, actually.
Yeah,
it's Leica. You're gonna like it. I think I would probably kind of compare this one to The Box Trolls a little bit, which is a movie that is kind of seen as the redheaded stepchild of Leica movies, but is a much more clever movie than I think people give it credit for, and I think Missing Link kind of in the same boat. Missing Link, solid time. And then finally I have one last discussion on this thing, and here's the thing. I talked about Cheers when I wrapped that show up, a couple months ago, right? And I spent about 2 years kind of on and off watching Cheers, and I really needed a good hangout sitcom again. And I was thinking of just jumping straight into Frasier, but I was I need a little break from the Cheers universe, the Cheers CU. So I don't know. I was considering shows to watch, and then I think I had a show I was watching on Netflix. And then for whatever reason, Netflix wasn't loading that day. So I went over to Hulu and just kind of clicked on Superstore, which is a show I've been meaning to watch for a long time. And I just hadn't gotten around to. So I was I'll check it out. Superstore, I've heard it's pretty good. And I have watched 3 full seasons of the show in the last month. Which is that's not a normal thing for me.
It took you 2 years to watch Cheers.
Yeah, I know. But this is the kind of thing where it's I've been watching a lot of Marvel movies over the past month or so I've been rewatching a lot of those. So I haven't had a lot of time for a lot of other things, but Superstore has just always been there. And it's I feel compelled to keep watching it. It's a great sitcom. I love this show, and I think everyone should be watching it. It's in the middle of season 4 right now. I think it's airing on NBC.
Because when we look past stereotypes, we learn to appreciate all the colors of the cloud.
That sounds heavenly.
Oh, MC Cool Cloud, you are too much.
Too much.
I think if there is any takeaway from today, it's this. Anyone can be a racist. Anyone.
Okay, yes, I should not have done that impression, but I want to be clear that I was not being racist. I was making a comment about racism.
Well, yeah, it's personally I'm not a fan of racist comments.
No,
so.
it's not what I was exaggerating on purpose to make a point.
Parody. She was making a joke about racism.
Yes.
Well, are racist jokes okay again?
What?
Okay, did you hear the one about the Jewish bird?
You know what? Never mind.
Ooh, fun fact. The dude that voiced MC Cool Cloud committed suicide in 1994.
No.
It was terrible.
That makes sense.
Developed by Justin Spitzer, who was one of the main writers in The Office for like 7 years, something like that. And it kind of traffics in like similar awkward humor, but definitely more like punchline based than situation based. And I think it resonates pretty hard if you've ever worked in retail before, especially a big box store, which me and Kyle both used to work in a big box store.
We did.
So there's a little bit of that personal connection, and also me and Mike used to work in retail together, which is weird connections being drawn here. But yes, America Ferrera is the star of the show, and the thing is, like, I knew her mainly from the How to Train Your Dragon movies before this. Like, so she was the star of Ugly Betty,
right?
Which was a show I did not watch, but I heard was good back in the day, but I just never watched it. But she's amazing on the show. She's hilarious, and she has like a will they won't they romance with this guy Jonah, played by Ben Feldman, who was on Mad Men. And it's honestly like it's the most invested I've been in one of those will they won't they romances in years. Like since Jim and Pam on The Office. Like honestly, like that, it's like up there for me. Like I just love watching those two together, and like the entire ensemble cast is great. The writing is very sharp, and it has this it has a really good streak of dark humor, which I really like, and a very like a really good. It satirizes the corporate workplace so well too. Just everything about Superstore. Like I've been having a blast with this show. I am like 7 episodes into season 4, and it's already been renewed for season 5. So that is good, but I'm almost caught up, and it's great. Superstore on NBC. Watch it if you haven't.
There's something just so pure about you just like falling in love with Superstore, and it's just I just needed to let you know that I appreciate it.
Of course. Have either of you guys seen Superstore?
I've seen some episodes of it. Yeah,
I've also seen a couple episodes.
You guys should like get into it. 'Cause it's great. It's so good. I want to recommend it to everybody.
Is it going to be like the new Community? Like every time I see you, you're like, oh, we're going to watch an episode of Superstore.
You trick me into watching the whole series.
No, well, I mean, Community is like a top 5 show of all time for me, and Superstore like is the show I'm like really into right now, and I'm like, I am loving it. Like I'm loving the show. It's not Community. Community is like next tier. It's like it's like Community, Simpsons, Twin Peaks, Mad Men, and Arrested Development are like my big 5. But I think here's the thing about Superstore that I think should give you reason to watch it. There's been 8 new episodes of Arrested Development out for a month, and I have not watched them.
Damn!
Wow!
Because I've been watching Superstore.
That says a lot.
Yeah,
that does say a lot.
I think it says a lot about how much I like Superstore and how much I was a little bit underwhelmed with season 5 of Arrested Development. But anyway, yeah. So that is Superstore. The entire show is available on Hulu right now. And you should go watch it. It's hilarious. Anyway, let's move on to Kyle's discussions. Kyle, what do you got for us today?
I have the first 2 Hellboy movies directed by Guillermo del Toro.
Okay, so yeah, obviously this is a reboot of the Hellboy series that we're going to review in a few minutes. But back in the day, back in the aughts, Guillermo del Toro, acclaimed Oscar-winning filmmaker for The Shape of Water, used to make some superhero movies. He made Blade 2, and then he made Hellboy and Hellboy 2.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know he did Blade 2.
You did?
I didn't know that either until just a couple nights ago.
Oh my god.
You didn't know he made the greatest movie ever made?
No, I didn't.
So weird that you guys didn't know that. But yeah. So Hellboy 2. Now this is a rewatch for you. Obviously, we mentioned at the top of the show, the two of us saw Hellboy 2 in theaters together.
Yes.
Way back in the summer of 2008. So you've been rewatching. How long has it been since you've seen the first 2 Hellboys?
So I don't think I've seen Hellboy 2 since 2008.
Wow.
But I had watched Hellboy 1 maybe 2 years ago. It was as recently as I had watched it.
Okay.
So when you invited me to do this episode, I was like, all right, I want to sit down and watch these movies again because it's been a while. And I remember enjoying them. It's been a while. I remembered enjoying them, so I rented the first one a couple weeks ago. So I had been sitting on that one for a while. And I watched it, and I think it's not as good as I remember it being. It's a little bit goofy. The CGI isn't bad for the time, because that what came out 2005?
2004.
2004. So for 2004 CGI, it's fine. It's passable. There's a lot of practical effects that I really enjoyed because I enjoy stuff like that. But some of the dialogue was a little goofy, and overall, like, I was a little. I wasn't as hot on it after I watched it. I thought it was still good, but after watching the first one, I thought it could be well serviced with an R rating because it's a pretty violent movie, but there is no gore.
Right.
There's like one drop of blood streaking down Hellboy's nose or his lip or whatever, but that's it.
Okay.
And he's like fighting this demon monster Lovecraftian thing. So after watching the first one, I thought, an R-rated version of this could work. Like a little bit more violence, a little bit of profanity, a little edginess thrown in. Like it could work. And then I watched the second one, and I remember enjoying the second one more than the first one. And I watched that one with 3 friends, so I didn't pay as much attention as I would have liked to. But again, I really enjoyed the use of practical effects. I thought the CG was fine. Again, for 2008, it looked fine. But again, I came off it not as hot. Like, it's good, but I didn't think it aged that well. I thought the dialogue was a little goofy like the first one, and some of it wasn't. Some of the dialogue even was just kind of bad. But Ron Perlman is excellent as Hellboy. Was it Doug Jones plays Abe Sapien?
Yes, he does.
I thought he was really good. The villain in Hellboy 2 is about as memorable as the villain from Thor 2.
Okay, so it's been 1 week since you looked at me.
You dick.
No, it's been probably, it might have been like 10 years since I've actually watched either of those Hellboy movies. And my recollection is that the first one was fine. Like, I remember always thinking the first one was like, yeah, it's fine, it's pretty good. But I remember loving Hellboy 2. And I would be curious to see how I react to it going back to it now. But I'm still a big Del Toro fan. But what I remember about Hellboy 2 is that they really let Del Toro kind of run loose with that movie. That one goes absolutely insane. I still think back to that whole sequence where they go like kind of the underground fairy underworld or whatever.
The Troll City or something?
Yes, the Troll City or whatever. And that's like just an amazing...
Oh, Troll Market.
Yeah, the Troll Market. And that's like an amazing just sequence, like visualized perfectly, and like everybody is physically there. Like there's no CGI in the crowds. Like there's like hundreds of extras, and they all have like weird makeup and like crazy shit going on, and it's awesome. And that's kind of...
That was my favorite part. The whole scene in the Troll Market, like Hellboy has a fight with this big guy. I think his name is Wink. And like that fight scene was excellent. And there's just, like you said, all the extras. Like everyone's there. It doesn't feel CGI. It doesn't feel fake. That was definitely my favorite part of the movie. And I did still really enjoy that part.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I want to rewatch both of them because, again, I haven't seen them in a long time. But yeah, what I remember is that Hellboy 2 really let Del Toro go loose with the creature design and all the production stuff. And I remember being really compelled by the story. And what I remember is that Hellboy 2 kind of leaves a lot of threads open for Hellboy 3 also.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Because I remember, doesn't Selma Blair gets pregnant at the end of the movie, right?
Yep, she is pregnant. And at the end of the movie, they're walking towards this, like, into the sunset or whatever, and Hellboy says, like, we got to get ready for the baby. And she goes, babies, plural, like she was having twins. And I actually watched this movie the other night with Vin, and Vin told me that apparently the plan was one of the babies was going to be a perfectly normal human, and the other twin was going to be the Antichrist.
Okay, yeah, so, that vaguely, I have like a vague remembrance of that. Yeah,
so it left it open to be fucking bananas for the third one, and I wish that could have gotten made.
Yeah, definitely. Mike, when was the last time you watched either of the Hellboys?
I don't think I've seen the first one in a long time. The second one I feel like is always on like HBO or something like that, and I watch it, not regularly, but probably within the last couple of years, maybe. Or, somewhere in the last 2 years or so. And I really do like the second one. I think the like you're talking, like everything you guys just said, the character design is incredible. The story it's enough. I mean, that scene when he gets beat up by the possessed lockers, like that's the funniest shit ever. Like that's so great.
By a cloud of mist voiced by Seth MacFarlane.
Yes.
Like what? Say no more.
Yes.
Yeah, Ron Perlman just, like, happens to look like Hellboy naturally, so that's insane. Yeah, it's like they're fun. So, I mean, but I haven't seen the first one in a long time, so that might not hold up so well, like you were saying, Kyle.
Yeah, fair enough.
So,
So, I mean, after watching Hellboy 1 and 2, were you, like, adequately prepared to jump into the new Hellboy?
I thought I was. Like I was saying, after watching both of those movies, I thought they're fun. I think they're a little dated. I think they could be well served by an R rating. Like they could play fast and loose with the language. They could have some gore. Like I think because those movies you can tell that they wanted there to be gore and blood and violence and whatever, but they couldn't with the PG-13 rating, or at least not to the degree that they could have.
Yeah,
so I went into Hellboy pretty ready. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't really think of Del Toro as like a necessarily gory filmmaker that much, but I think he can like jump into that when he wants to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could sort of see that. But yeah, we'll see how this R rating affected your view of the new Hellboy in our feature review of Hellboy 2019.
We face every threat there is, and yet you take me in. Hello, son. Made me a goddamn weapon.
Where's my fucking violin?
Listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Out there's a 5th century sorceress who wants to bring down the curtain on London and the world.
Great. Homework.
Why do you fight for those who hate and fear you? You were meant for this. Out of the ashes, new Eden will emerge.
Okay, I'd appreciate a prophecy with more relatable stakes.
All right, that was from the trailer for Hellboy, the new movie written by Andrew Cosby and directed by Neil Marshall. Stars David Harbour as Hellboy, Milla Jovovich, Ian McShane, Sasha Lane, and Daniel Day Kim, among others. And the IMDb plot synopsis for Hellboy reads, based on the graphic novels by Mike Mignola, Hellboy, caught between the worlds of the supernatural and human, battles an ancient sorceress bent on revenge. So, Kyle, we'll start with you since you are the guest, and we kind of segued out of your discussions segment there. What did you think of Hellboy 2019?
I am fully aware that it is not very good. But
a ringing endorsement. We can end the podcast right there.
That being said, I am a fan of action movies with, like, over-the-top gore. Like, I watched a movie a couple weeks ago called Ninja Assassin. And
we're familiar with Ninja Assassin, Kyle.
The first 5 minutes of the movie, a guy's head gets cut in half and blood sprays everywhere, and I'm like, oh, this is the best. So I'm okay. I like that stuff, even though I'm fully aware that it is not great.
Okay, interesting. So you're saying you enjoyed Hellboy?
I had fun.
Okay. All right, cool. How do you think it would compare to the Hellboy 1 and 2? Like, of the Del Toro movies, do you think do you like this more than those movies?
No. The Del Toro movies are better movies.
Okay.
They're better written, the stories are tighter. Hell, even the dialogue that I thought was kind of corny, for the most part, is better.
Okay.
The stories make sense. They pick a lane and they stay in the lane for the whole time. But I think they are better made movies than the new Hellboy.
All right, interesting. Okay, we'll move on to Mike. Mike, what did you think of Hellboy 2019?
I think Hellboy 2019's like, it's okay, I guess. You know, I was having fun. I was kind of into it. You know, I do really like this character, and the comics are great. Everyone should read them. Definitely recommend reading the comics.
Right, like you said, you've read the first two omnibuses, the first two omnibuy.
Or however it is.
And which were the ones that were not adapted into this movie.
Yes. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit. They're in there, and I guess we'll talk about them in spoilers, which was fun, because I was like, oh, I know what that is. But anyway, back to this. I was having a lot of fun until there's this like one moment, there's like this one set piece where I was like, this is supposed to be dope, and it's not. And I'm kind of checked out now. And it's unfortunate. It's kind of like, it's probably kind of early. It's within the first half, I think, if I remember correctly. So I was like, ugh. But, you know, for the most part, it's fun. Like I said, I really like Hellboy as a character. So, like, just getting to hang out with him just like be him, you know, just being Hellboy, doing his thing with the BPRD, like that concept is so much fun to me and is exciting to me. So like I was willing to forgive some of it. I think David Harbour is doing a pretty good job. Like I like David Harbour, so I'm having fun with him. The surrounding cast, maybe not so much, but you know, it is what it is. It's okay. I wish it was better, you know.
Okay. Well, I gotta say, I think both of you guys are giving this movie way too much credit.
Yeah, I mean, I fall in the same thing with Kyle, where like I recognize it's not great, it's not good, but you know, it has enough of the thing that I want for me to be like, okay, I guess
that's where I'm at. It's got enough of the thing that I went in wanting this. It gave me this, and that's all I could ask for.
I feel like you could ask for more, guys.
Raise the bar a little,
guys. I really wanted to like this movie so much. Like you know, like I'm not super familiar with Hellboy outside of the Del Toro movies, right? And again, I said I think the first one is fine. The second one I think is great. I love the Golden Army, and I haven't seen it in a long time, and I should get back to that because it is a movie that really that's the movie that really showed me what Del Toro was capable of. I think that was the first like real Del Toro movie I saw, and that's the one that like I mean I had seen the first Hellboy. And then I saw Hellboy 2, and that's the one that really opened my mind. It was like, oh shit, I gotta watch like everything this guy does. Because that was like, the summer of 2008 was like a big summer for me, movie-wise. That was the year Iron Man came out, which we'll talk about in our Endgame review, kind of retrospecting that. But that's the year The Dark Knight came out. It's the year Wally came out. Like that was a huge summer for me, and it's the kind of summer that like opened me up to like a larger world of movies. And Hellboy 2 was a big part of that. Like that, you know, got me to check out Pan's Labyrinth and got me into more foreign films and stuff like that as a result of Hellboy 2. And so, yeah, I have a connection to Hellboy 2 specifically. And I really wish Del Toro and Perlman had gotten the chance to make a Hellboy 3. Since, like I said, second one leaves some threads that look like they won't get picked up. So now we've got this new Hellboy instead, and it's just not as good as what I think a Hellboy 3 would be. And I don't want to compare it to like a movie that's not going to get made. So I want to judge it on its own merits. You know, this is a grittier take that is supposed to get us closer to what the actual comics version of Hellboy is like. And like maybe that's the case, but like I don't think that makes for a compelling movie this time around. To me, it never felt like the movie got a real handle on whether it wanted to be like silly and campy and over the top gory, like a Sam Raimi movie, or like an early Peter Jackson or something like that, or whether it wanted to be like gritty and serious, like a Christopher Nolan movie or something like that. I felt like it kind of waffled back and forth between the two, and there's some like nice moments on both sides. Like there's stuff in there that I liked. But most of it just feels like incoherent. Like it honestly felt like when I was watching Suicide Squad and being like, none of this is like some of this seems like it could make sense, but like it's edited together in such a way where it does not.
I get that. I definitely get that.
Like I saw the movie like 2 days ago, and if you asked me to recite more than like 3 plot points, I'm not sure I could do that.
It definitely has a feel, a lot of like a checklist of Hellboy things, like as having read the comics. Where it's like somebody kind of flipped through and was like, oh, we got to make sure this panel's in it. Okay. Oh, we got to make sure this panel's in it. It definitely has that kind of feel to it. So like I definitely agree with the kind of like, now we're doing this. Oh, now we're doing this kind of feel to the plot line.
Right. And that's the thing. I feel like, you know, this, I think we were talking about this before the podcast started recording. They adapted like 4 different Hellboy comics for this movie. Or like kind of took elements from a bunch of different ones, and most of them were from the omnibus that you did not read. So
yeah, it didn't get to. Yeah,
yeah. So you can't speak to a lot of that stuff, but you know, I think this movie kind of just throws you into the world of Hellboy and all the mythology and the baggage that comes along with that, and it's a lot. And you know, I think there are movies that do it well. But like more than half of the dialogue in this movie is exposition just to explain what's happening to the viewer. And, you know, it's who is what, why this is happening, like all that kind of stuff. But the movie also rushes from plot point to plot point without giving like anything room to breathe. So it's a weird case where it's like both over and under explained. Where I'm just like confused the entire time. It was like Warcraft. Remember Warcraft, the movie?
Yeah.
Where it just kind of throws you in there and be like the orcs and the humans, and they give you like this like 20-minute backstory, and it's like I didn't retain any of that. And now we're going. Like now we're off. That's how I felt with Hellboy.
Yeah, it definitely has that kind of rush job approach to it. I wouldn't even when you said it has this kind of over the top. Or waffles between this over-the-top, you know, Sam Raimi gore kind of thing. And you said Christopher Nolan for the dark, gritty, edgy side. And I wouldn't even go as high. Like, no, come on.
No, I mean,
it's like Snyderverse. It's like Snyder version.
Yeah, more Snyder. Nolan was a bad example. More of a Zack Snyder type deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're working with.
Yeah, but Kyle, I mean, you're saying you enjoyed a lot of this.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you enjoyed. because as again, there are bits of it that I kind of liked, but I'm curious where you're coming from here.
I liked David Harbour in the role. I thought he did a really good job as Hellboy, given what he had to work with, being that the movie was an incoherent mess for a lot of it. I just thought what he was doing and his take on the character, it felt not so much in line with Ron Perlman's. It didn't feel like he was doing a Ron Perlman impression, which I liked. I felt like he was doing his own thing. I really liked Ian McShane as his dad, whose name I forget.
I will give you Ian McShane. He's. I think he knows exactly the kind of movie he's in, and he plays it pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I was saying, I'm a fan of over-the-top gore. So, in some scenes where some like really horrific shit is happening, I was like, "Oh, fucking sweet, yeah, hell yeah, let's go for it." But there, within that, there is towards the end of the movie when some really horrific over-the-top gore is happening. I'm like, you kind of didn't need to do this. Like, this whole scene didn't have to be here. This didn't have to happen.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you mentioned before that, like, the R rating was something you were looking forward to. But, like, I feel like the R rating kind of hurt this movie in some ways to me. It feels like...
it went too far into the R rating.
It's not even that it feels like it went too far for me. It feels like... It feels like a 13-year-old's idea of what an R rating should be.
That's what I mean. Because, like... is it a spoiler if I say Ian McShane's first line of the movie?
No, go ahead.
Because the first line of dialogue you hear in the movie is Ian McShane go, "The 5th century was called the Dark Ages, and for good fucking reason." I'm like, okay, this movie's rated R, I get it. It was kind of like in Logan, like his first line of dialogue was, "Ah, fuck." Like, okay, it's rated R, I get it. Like, you don't have to shove that down my throat. But... yeah, it was like a 13-year-old's idea of what an R-rated movie would be.
Yes, but that said, when that line happened, I was on board. Like, I was...
that really surprises me.
That whole opening scene, which is shot in black and white, except for like this shock of red around the witch's cape, and it's, just very over-the-top gory, and like you have Ian McShane doing this like really ridiculous narration. Like, I was like, if the movie... I feel like that had a great balance of like, just... over-the-top gore, stupid camp, and like it knew exactly what it was doing. And if the movie could maintain that tone for its entirety, like I think it would still be trash, but it would be like enjoyable trash. You know what I mean?
It would feel like a pulp comic book. Like it would feel like that kind of story.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's the movie that it set itself up as, and it just didn't deliver on that for me.
Yeah.
A lot of this movie seems to be in service of like the 80s hair metal needle drop.
Yes.
We do it a lot.
There is a few moments like that, yeah. And we'll talk about some more of those in spoilers, I think. I will say, Mike, let's go to you first. What did you think of David Harbour's Hellboy?
I thought he did pretty good. I liked it. It's so weird. So much of the comic book and the character of Hellboy, there's so many panels in the comic where it's just him going, "Oh crap," getting punched, and then like panels of him flying through the air saying shit, and then him landing and going, "I'll feel that in the morning." And like that's 90% of Hellboy's character, and David Harbour really crushes that kind of stuff. Like he's a punching bag that is also a paranormal detective, basically.
Yeah.
So like I had fun. I had enough fun. I thought David Harbour was doing good. I wish it looked less like a mask. It's just unfortunate that Ron Perlman just looks like yeah. So all they had to do was paint his face red.
Right. I mean, with this, it seemed like they had to make him look like Hellboy, but they also kind of had to make him look like Ron Perlman as a result of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, I think he's fine in the movie. I don't think I don't know. I think to me, I don't really like his interpretation of the character as much as Ron Perlman's. I feel like Ron Perlman played him as like grumpy but lovable, like good-hearted still. But Harbour kind of plays him like a whiny teenager, and like he's kind of complaining the whole movie, and like that's just not somebody that I want to spend that much time with. You know what I mean? But like as far as the supporting cast goes, I said Ian McShane. He's always a blast, and he's fun here. I also honestly really like Mila Jovovich in this movie. I think she is like doing the full camp thing. And,
her and Ian McShane know what movie this is.
Exactly. They know exactly what movie they're in. And I think that, to me, is like... those were the performances I was into. With David Harbour, he was fine, but with especially with like Sasha Lane and Daniel Day Kim, really with Sasha Lane. Sasha Lane is an actress who I think is awesome. She was in American Honey, a phenomenal movie that is well worth checking out. And then she's in this now, and like I feel like she just... like I think a lot of that is the character. Like the writing for that character is bad. But like she was the... person who can talk to the dead or whatever,
right?
Whatever her name was, and like I don't know, it's weird because she's not a British actress, I don't think, and so she's kind of putting on this British accent, and she's having to deliver like this weird dialogue, and I feel like there's like a disconnect there. I feel like I don't know, everything she said just felt like a little bit off, and I'm not sure why. It just didn't work for me. And then Daniel Day Kim is like kind of there throughout the movie, like he doesn't really do much, too much, but he's like kind of just there.
Action man, guy with scars on his face. He's mysterious. But and I will say, I think Neil Marshall, who directed this movie, is a good director. And he was the director of The Descent, the horror movie from 2005, which is an amazing movie. That's a great horror movie. And then this movie just doesn't. I don't know. It's weird. I think there are a couple of sequences in this movie that allow Neil Marshall's direction to shine through. And I think Kyle referenced one. I'm actually curious if the scene that you were talking about that you didn't like was the scene that Kyle liked, that he texted me about, because and we'll talk about it in we're going to talk about it in spoilers, but I think there's a couple of scenes where you see that direction kind of shine through, but they also feel like largely extraneous. Like you could cut them out and nothing would happen. Like, But that's sort of how I felt about every scene in this movie. I feel like you could cut it out and like it wouldn't really affect the story that much. I think you could like cut out a half hour, or you can add an extra hour, and like the movie would be better either way. Wow.
It feels like the movie that exists in its current form is like the worst possible version of the story to me. And I don't mean to like harp on like how terrible I think this movie is, because I think some of the makeup and production design, it's like solid. I think there is some imagery in this movie that is like undeniably awesome, but it just felt like a slog to me. Like I just felt like I was watching it. I wasn't like necessarily bored. But I just wasn't invested. Like I was kind of watching that. I was just watching the movie, and I left the theater, and I didn't think about it again until I had to record this podcast. And I was like, "Oh shit, I better write down some notes."
Oh no!
But yeah, any final thoughts about Hellboy, guys, before moving to spoilers?
No, I don't think so. For me,
no, not really.
Okay. I think that says a lot about Hellboy.
I will say though, unlike a certain guest on your podcast, I watched the whole movie.
You made it to the end?
I made it to I watched the mid-credit scene. I got that far.
Did you watch the post-credit scene?
No. Oh, shit.
You said, hoisted on your own petard.
Yeah. Maybe you don't brag so quickly, man. Just throwing it out there.
Well, shit. I guess you're going to have to explain to me the ending of this movie.
Amazing. All right, let's move on into spoilers for Hellboy, starting right now.
Stop it, both of you! You're spoiling everything!
All right, spoilers for Hellboy, starting right now. So, guys, I have one question before we get into most of the spoilers. At the end of the movie, the demons that like rise up and kill people at the end of the movie, right? They're there because Hellboy draws Excalibur, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So Hellboy is responsible for like the deaths of like thousands of people.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure because they don't address that at all.
That was the scene that I was referring to, and I was like, "All right, this didn't have to happen."
Okay.
Yeah. Literally, like you said, like the over the top gore, like the giant monsters like ripping people apart. I'm like, "Oh, this is wait, Hellboy did this."
Yeah, if that had happened in any other context, where it was like it happened not because of Hellboy, I'd be fine.
Yeah, if the witch was like, "Yeah, check out these monsters," I was like, "Oh fuck yeah, look at these monsters." But then I was like, "Oh shit, the good guy's doing this."
It just felt very weird. Like I was like, that's that like. You know, like I was already pretty on the fence about Hellboy, the character, to begin with, and now he's responsible for the deaths of a lot of people. So, yeah that's that. All right, so Mike, I want to go to you because you were saying there was a scene in the movie that kind of threw you off the movie, basically, right?
Yeah,
like early on.
Yeah, and it's the giant fight scene.
I knew it.
Unfortunately,
that was the scene that I liked.
Well, so like I liked it. I liked what was going on. I liked the betrayal with the Osiris Club or whichever thing it was, whatever secret society it was.
Whichever of the 15 secret societies that are in this movie.
Yeah, which is like part of the stuff I really like about the Hellboy stories and stuff is that there's always this weird occult, conspiracy that's going on, and there's always some big, powerful, whatever situation going on. And I was into it, and then they betray him, and like all this stuff. And he survives because it's Hellboy. Like, yeah, of course he does. This happens. This is what he does. He gets murdered, but then survives because he's a demon. And then it just looked so weak. Like the fight scene, like there's clearly choreography going on, but also very clearly David Harbour just running in front of a green screen and not anything actually happening.
Right.
I felt the CG was a little weak, and it was kind of hard to follow, like the way it's edited. It sort of reminded me of the like church shootout scene in Kingsman, because it's edited to be this like one weird long take fight scene thing.
Okay,
but like incomprehensible, unfortunately. Which comes up later again at the end. I felt the same way at the very last like shootout scene after the 6 months later thing. When they're like...
that was also very hard to follow.
Storming the lab, where I was like, oh, this is kind of like a big, long, quickly paced shootout, like edited to be one take, sort of like the fight scene in the church shootout in Kingsman. And just, I don't know, that's just like the weird point of reference. And that's so much better than anything that ever happens in this movie.
Right.
So yeah, when the big giant fight happened, I was kind of like, I think I might check out now, unfortunately. Because I knew that was supposed to be really badass and cool. And it just didn't land for me. And I was like, oh no, if this isn't going to work, the rest of the movie's not going to work.
That is really interesting, because like those two sequences, the giant scene and that scene at the very end, are like the movie that I wish this was. Like those were the two scenes in the movie where I was like, if they could do more stuff like this, and actually make it relevant to whatever is happening in the story, because the giant scene is completely superfluous to anything else that's going on in the movie.
Absolutely.
But like, if they could do more stuff like those sequences throughout the movie, I feel like I might have liked the movie more. You know what I mean? Like, I thought those sequences were pretty well directed. I thought the one take, like, I mean, obviously it wasn't exactly one take, but like they made it look like it was, and like I thought it looked kind of cool. I thought the way the music mixed with the action was pretty good. I forget what song it was during that scene.
I don't remember.
But it was like some heavy like 80s metal song or whatever. And the way like, they timed in with the action, I thought was pretty good. There's one point where it actually like pauses during one, like the music pauses, and then as soon as like one like punch lands, it starts up again. And I was like, that was a cool editing moment. And then the scene at the very end with Hellboy, Sasha Lane, and Dan Day Kim raiding that building, I thought also solid. And honestly, at that scene, like with those three working together as a team and everything like that felt like that was probably the movie that we should have been watching the entire time.
I did enjoy like the dynamic of the three of them together.
I enjoyed it in that last scene, but
in that very last scene. The rest of the movie, they weren't a team. But like Mike was saying, it's a little incomprehensible what's going on because the camera's kind of all over the place. It's he's like up in the rafters killing people, and it's to Hellboy, and then it's to the girl, and but the three of them together, it works. I thought it was fun, even though I couldn't quite see what they were doing.
Yeah, okay. I did like that final moment though.
No, the Ape Sapien thing.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I didn't. I did like Ape Sapien. I was mad that they saved him for that fucking like zinger.
When they showed like, hey, Ape Sapien's coming in the next movie. Like there was a guy sitting like in the row, like a few seats away from me. That was like, oh shit, Ape Sapien. Like he was obviously a big Hellboy fan, and I looked over at him and I thought to myself, like, there were 2 Hellboy movies with Ape Sapien in them, right? Like.
I was constantly wondering where he was the whole movie.
Really?
The second his hand popped up, I really would have loved if Hellboy just like turns to the camera and like, pray this movie does well overseas.
Is that a fish pun?
Deadpool fourth wall break?
Oh yeah.
Fish pun, yeah. But yeah, so Kyle, you were a fan of the giant scene, though. I mean, you texted me about that. Like when we were texting about the movie the other day, I texted you, like, man, that movie was bad, and you were like, but what about the giant scene? And I was like, it was fine, I guess. Like, but you liked it. You liked the giant scene.
I did. I thought it was fun. It was like Mike was saying, like it's a lot of Hellboy just kind of getting thrown around.
Right.
I mean, but literally though, in the comics, that's like 90% of what happened.
Yeah, just kind of getting fucked up the whole time. He ends up coming out on top. But I don't know. It was just I thought it was fun to watch. I thought like you were saying, the sound editing, like with the music and everything. I thought that whole scene sounded really good.
Yeah, I thought the mix was very solid.
Yeah.
But I do want to give some credit to Thomas Hayden Church in this movie, playing Lobster Johnson.
Fuck yes.
I forgot, yeah. I was going to say, because I remember he popped up on screen and I was looking at him and I was like, I know you.
Yes.
Who are you?
Yeah. Yeah, when he showed up, like, he shows up for that one scene in the movie. And he shows up and he has the mask on and he never takes it off. But you're watching that role and it's like, that's definitely like a person. Like, it's not some random actor. It's got to be somebody like known. And then during the credits it shows Thomas Hayden Church and it's like, oh cool, Thomas Hayden Church. And I think that Lobster Johnson scene is kind of fun. Like, I enjoyed that flashback sequence and stuff like that. Kind of wish we had seen a movie about him instead, actually.
Yeah, that the first two omnibuses, Omnibuy, we'll never decide which it is. The first two volumes, focus on that part of the story for Hellboy. And that part of the story is fucking dope. It's Nazis with Rasputin trying to summon demons to end the world. Like, why are we doing this other movie, man? And there's a guy named Lobster Johnson who brands people with a lobster claw so the devil knows who sent him. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, make that movie.
Yeah,
that's Hellboy 1, kind of, just without
I don't
Lobster
remember.
Johnson.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say. I was pretty sure Lobster Johnson was not in the first Hellboy movie, but like a lot of those elements in that origin story are also in the first Del Toro Hellboy movie. So I could see maybe why they would want to avoid it for this movie because they want to try to make their own thing and all that stuff. But I don't know, man. It felt like a missed opportunity to show some cool shit. Because that's the thing. This movie starts off way later in Hellboy's story. Like, you're saying it starts off in, like, the third omnibus or whatever. And it doesn't necessarily need, like, it's still sort of an origin story. But the thing is, the movie has an insistence on, like, stopping literally everything in the movie so that we can get every single character's backstory. And by the time we got to, like, Daniel Day Kim's backstory, I was like, fucking this guy too? Like, can we just move? Can we move on?
It's a shitty version of Hugo Stiglitz 3 times.
No, I mean, bringing back the Suicide Squad comparison, like, that movie has an insistence on introducing you to every single character over and over and over again. And I felt like that was kind of this movie, but with origin stories. It was like, all right, you get an origin story. You get an origin story. You get an origin story. It was a lot. It was a lot to take in. And ultimately, like, each one gets, like, maybe 3 to 5 minutes of screen time. So none of it really sticks with you. Because it just kind of moves on to the next thing. And nothing matters. Nothing matters in this movie. Once you get an origin story for the pig creature, I was like, I'm out. I can't do this.
That's what I was about to say. The girl, what was her name? Something?
I don't know. And
What's
I'm
the
not going to
actress's name?
Sasha Lane.
Sasha Lane. Her origin story is kind of tied in with the Pigman. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, fair. All right, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, I will say too, just real quick, because I just love Lobster Johnson. That whole sequence where we get them summoning Hellboy and stuff. Like, some of that is straight like panel recreations, which was really fucking cool. Like all the character costumes, like the blue and red goggles and the way Rasputin's dressed and like all that stuff. So like, on a just like a fan service level, I was like, fuck yeah. Which is a shame because then it doesn't ever come back up.
Yeah. Now, as somebody who has read the comics, Mike, is King Arthur a big thing in the Hellboy comics? So that's the thing. I haven't read the third one, so I assume that's the part where it comes up in the third one. But that is one of the things that Hellboy does is incorporate mythologies from all over, various different cultures, and takes them and puts them all into this one thing. There's this Lovecraftian stuff and Nazis. It merges a lot of real world and mythological stuff. So like that's part of the fun. So I assume that King Arthur and that whole
plot line and Merlin and stuff is in the third omnibus, which I haven't gotten to.
Okay, fair enough. I will say, like, with the King Arthur stuff, kind of threw me off when it first, like, I mean, it's like in the first scene of the movie, basically. But when it first happened, I was like, hey, King Arthur's in this? Like, what is what's going on? And then, a few months ago, The Kid Who Would Be King just came out, right? And, like, I saw that movie, and, like, I thought that movie was pretty good, but it does the King Arthur stuff so much more interestingly. Like, I'm somebody who, I don't care that much about King Arthur. I enjoy some of the Arthurian legend stories or whatever when they're presented well, but, like, it's not something I hold that closely to my heart. They're mostly, like, public domain stories that have just been around forever. And so with Kid Who Would Be King, I thought they had like a really interesting spin on some of that stuff with, like, Merlin and the Lady in the Lake and all that. And this movie just felt like, it paid lip service to a lot of that. But coming after The Kid Who Would Be King, it just felt like it felt inferior. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
It definitely rings of that, like, the way we keep talking about it. Somebody that read about this stuff in their English class and during the lecture was doodling demons killing people in their notebook. And we're like, let's make a movie of this.
Pretty much, yeah. I will say I did think it was pretty hilarious when Merlin died. Maybe that was just me being callous, but, like, when, like, it's just the way that happened, where it's like, "Oh, you fool! Goodbye forever!" And he fades away and turns into dust.
It's like the best death scene.
Again, another death due to Hellboy. Like,
yeah.
Hellboy killed him, and it's like, and he feels no remorse about this. He's just, like, wandering around doing his Hellboy thing. Yeah, I don't know. I just did not, like, it was so weird. But yeah, the death, like, just the way the actor was playing that scene, it's just, which was Brian Gleason, by the way, the son of Brendan Gleason.
Yeah.
Wow. Because as soon as he started talking, I was like, I feel like I know that voice. And then he was in the credits as Brian Gleason. I was like, it's a young Brendan Gleason's voice. That's why.
If you see him, like, without all the Merlin makeup, it just looks like young Brendan Gleason. It's kind of wild. But actually, question, since you've read stuff about Hellboy before, or the Omnibuy. Yes. I'm sticking with that.
We'll see. We're going with it.
We'll workshop it.
Is the Baba Yaga part of that?
Yes, that was what I was thinking about when I said it seemed like someone flipped through some books and was like, "Oh, this has got to be in it," because Baba Yaga is in the comics and she does play a big quote unquote role. I mean, maybe it's bigger in the third one. I don't know. But she's kind of this, like, observer that kind of, like, exists in this parallel dimension that, like, sometimes brings Hellboy to her to, like, give a weird warning to, or, like, offer a deal, offer something like that. But in this, it's like, it feels, it doesn't really do anything other than just check that box that Baba Yaga's in the Hellboy thing.
I did. I like that scene only for the fact that most of the Baba Yaga was practical. And it wasn't just like this gross, disgusting CGI witch. It was like someone in makeup and prosthetic, and I appreciated that. But as I'm watching this scene, I'm like, why?
What's going on?
Did this have to happen? And because he just, like, he comes back to Earth, there's like, I fucking know where she is, let's go. And I'm like, he could have done, like, something else. Like, he didn't need this whole thing.
I had that written down too. Like, I had zero idea what was happening during anything to do with Baba Yaga. I was completely checked out of the movie. I had no idea what was going on because it comes out of nowhere. They don't explain anything about that. It accomplishes nothing. It takes forever, and I just had no idea what was happening. It just feels like it's this thing that you have to add in there because Baba Yaga is in Hellboy comics, like you said, Mike. But, like, for anybody who's not deeply versed into Hellboy comics, like the guy in my theater apparently was, who was freaking out over every bit about it, then, it just feels like nonsense. It's like you're throwing it at me, and it's just ricocheting off my head, and I'm not going to retain that information at all.
When Hellboy is, like, in the parallel dimension, and the chicken house walks up to him, and he goes, Baba Yaga. I heard someone around me go, wait, is this John Wick 3?
Oh, that's so good.
I wouldn't mind a John Wick versus Hellboy movie, I gotta tell you.
Oh, man, that'd be cool.
Now we're talking on Marvel's What If series.
Available on Disney Plus, November 12th.
You're giving me more and more reasons to buy this, man.
Yeah, I felt like I had a point I was going to make about Baba Yaga, and I don't really remember. Oh, just in general, the way this plot is structured, and like you mentioned earlier, I think, Mike, this takes place, like, pretty late in the timeline, quote unquote, of Hellboy's life. BPRD is already a thing. Like, it's established clearly with all these other people. It feels there's so much stuff that we are expected to, or there's so much stuff that we would already know. Like, and I think this is what you were referencing before, where, like, we have to keep stopping to explain why all these people exist and their relationship to Hellboy, because it's set so late in his career, or whatever you want to call it. So it feels very disjointed to put all this stuff in there, and these established relationships that we are just supposed to know, but actually we actually stop and then tell us, and then, okay, now we can resume them again. So, it would be one thing if it plays it like we already know it, right?
I was
like,
just
if they
about to say,
just,
like, would the movie be better if they played it like we already knew it?
Probably.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I can see that. When you watch Ocean's 11, right? This is, like, to me, the best example of economical storytelling. You don't need to cut away to every character's backstory throughout the movie to explain what every character is doing and what they're all about, right? You just introduce these characters, you put them in a room together, and that's that, right? And you get attached to them through that, and you maybe learn a little bit about the characters through some of the conversation that comes up or whatever. But that's basically it, and that's kind of the thing. I feel like with the advent of the MCU, I feel like there is a desire in a lot of movies to introduce a lot of characters that you can have in other movies that'll explain their backstory later, or throw in a lot of characters and see what sticks, and like whatever people will latch onto, and you'll explain these characters on their own time or whatever. But I sort of miss the economical storytelling of something like Ocean's 11, where you just have these characters, they're there, you're going to watch them, and that's it. That's the movie.
And I made a joke about John Wick a minute ago, but John Wick is also like that. It'll throw a concept at you and be like, "This is it," and you're like, "Fucking okay, let's go."
Yes.
Like the Continental, it doesn't give you a backstory like, in 1800, the Continental started in level. It's Ian McShane explaining to you what the
for good fucking reason.
I was going to say, you're getting a lot of use out of your Ian McShane impression today.
It expects the viewer to just be on board, and it doesn't have to hold your hand through it.
Right.
And Hellboy is like, all right, we want you to be on board, but we're going to hold your hand through it.
For an R-rated movie, it treats its audience like children.
That's a mic drop moment. That's it.
Yeah. I agree 100% with all that stuff. But so Mike, you referred to before about some of the soundtrack needle drops that happened in the movie. So it's a very heavy 80s metal type soundtrack, and I saw that criticized a lot, but I thought it was actually to me it was mostly pretty solid, utilized fairly effectively. Like I mentioned, I forget what song was playing during the Giants scene, but I thought the Giants scene did a pretty good job with it. I also really liked the bit at the beginning with Rocky Like a Hurricane, but it was done in Spanish because they were in Mexico.
I like that too.
I thought that was a clever little touch. It kind of reminded me of the Spanish Hotel California and Big Lebowski.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. It also it was, the needle drops were fun until I realized it was just songs that say devil or demon a lot of times. And I was well, it's not really that clever anymore.
Yeah, and then it ends with Motley Crue, and it's of course Hellboy ends with Motley Crue.
Sure.
But so should we talk about the post-credit scenes of Hellboy?
Oh, yes.
Get into that. Should we explain to Kyle what one of them was? I guess. So first the movie ends with the Abe Sapien reveal, which honestly probably should have been a post-credit scene. I feel like if they were going to do that.
Yeah.
See, that's why I didn't stay till the end, because I felt like, here's the post-credit scene at the end of the movie, and here's a little mid-credit teaser. It's that's everything, right?
What more could they do?
I've already been teased twice. How could I be teased a third time?
Exactly. I'm glad you understand.
But so Abe Sapien happens at the very end, right? He doesn't actually show up on screen, but you see his hand kind of pop on the glass. And then the mid-credit scene is Lobster Johnson showing up with Hellboy at Ian McShane's grave. Because, Ian McShane dies in the movie. We did mention that.
Yeah.
But so Lobster Johnson shows up and they have a little bit of a conversation. Hellboy's starstruck. He's oh man, it's Lobster Johnson. And then he walks away and he's recruiting Hellboy for something. So, I mean, what did you guys think of that mid-credit scene? Hey, we got more Lobster Johnson, which was
bonus.
Can I see the claw? Or he's like, you probably want to see the claw. He's like, yeah. Shows it to him.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd love he's such a legend in the comics too. There's a whole arc about that goes and follows him for a minute. And then, he shows up. I think this scene is from one of the comics, which makes me think that the next movie will focus more on those earlier omnibus stuff. But, yeah, and Hellboy is, completely starstruck. And it's
I also like that he's drunk at his father's grave, so he's, extra, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it shows you what a badass he is, that of Hellboy, the guy who can get, end the world, possibly, and go through everything he goes through, and he's impressed by Lobster Johnson. It's hell yeah.
Right. I thought it was a fine little mid-credit scene. Then there's a post-credit scene, which has Baba Yaga talking to someone on screen.
Rasputin, I'm guessing?
Apparently, according to Wikipedia, it's Koshai or Koshel or whatever, because she says something along the lines of, if you do this for me, then I will let you die or something. And that's, his whole thing is he wants to die or something. Which is probably past your omnibus reading, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I guess she's recruiting him to kill Hellboy, I guess. That's the idea. But again, like everything else with Baba Yaga in this movie, I had no idea what was going on. And so it was a lot like the mid-credit scene in Shazam with Mr. Mind, where I was just this seems like really deep-cut comics lore that I do not understand.
Yeah, you know what I wanted to mention before, when the first time Baba Yaga shows up, it really, when he's in the hut with the chicken feed, and I was like, it's practical, it looks really cool, and they're doing this, weird contortionist thing, which was, a gross and off-putting, which is fine, but I was like, man, this really just feels like a ripoff of the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth, and I wish this was just a Guillermo del Toro movie. Yeah,
just Hellboy 3.
Yeah. And then, they sit down at a large banquet table full of food, and I was like, well, yep, not helping yourselves. You're doing it more. And then they fight, which is when I was like, I'm out. The scene's weird.
Yeah. But I did want to kind of go back to the post-credit scene a little bit. So, yes. Kyle, you didn't see it, so throwing that out there. But,
I'll tune out.
Yeah, but if you want to. But it was basically incomprehensible if you haven't read comics, right? That's kind of the whole thing. It's like I haven't read the comics, and I don't know anything that happened. I had to look it up on Wikipedia. And you have read some of the comics, and you didn't even really know.
I got it wrong,
happening, yeah. And I think, that's one of the things, we had this with this movie, and we had this with Shazam, where, it was a very deep-cut comics lore post-credit scene. And I think, people have said, the Marvel post-credit scenes, some of them aren't. I don't know. I feel like Marvel has done such a good job of making those post-credit scenes accessible to audiences. And I think that's why Marvel post-credit scenes have the reputation of being you gotta stay to the end. It's the Marvel movie, you gotta stay to the end to see what tease is coming up next. But it's always teasing something that's it's even if it's teasing something that is deep comics stuff, it's always within the context of something that has happened in the movie that you just watched, right? Almost always anyway, right? So even at the end of the Avengers, right, where the big purple guy shows up, right?
Right.
It's Thanos, but nobody in the audience outside of deep comic geeks know that it's Thanos. But we know that it's the guy that Loki was talking to throughout the whole movie that gave Loki his army. He's the one who's answering to this big purple guy, right? So this big purple guy is probably bad news because that guy who Loki was taking orders from is taking orders from this guy. So it's oh man, this guy must be the real threat. So you don't need to know who Thanos is to know that that's a bad dude, right? That's
right.
The arc of that scene that I just broke down for you. With this movie, I had no idea what was going on with this Baba Yaga thing, and I was there was no context for anything of it. It was just Baba Yaga talking to someone off screen, and I don't think that person even had any dialogue. I think it was just her monologuing at them. So, and it just didn't make any sense if you hadn't read any comics. I just want to give credit to Marvel for actually making post-credit scenes that makes sense because it's kind of hard to do if you're not deep into comics lore, to make something that's accessible to mainstream audiences that also teases something that they don't know about yet.
I wonder, is the post-credit scene in Iron Man 1, was that accessible to non-comic book people at the time? I mean, it's Nick Fury walking in saying, "I'm putting together a team," I think, something like that.
I would say it is. I mean, I remember when that happened, and again, we'll probably talk about this in our Endgame discussion when we do our retrospective of the MCU. But when that post-credit scene hits, at that point in time, most people did not know that scene existed. Right?
That's fair. Nobody stayed.
People didn't stay for it. We stayed for it. Me, I think that was another movie that me and Kyle saw together. Yeah. Which I feel like I'm saying that a lot this episode for some reason, but we saw a lot of movies together when we were in high school. But that was a scene that we stayed for because I think I had heard that there was a post-credit scene, so I was like, oh, we gotta stay for it. But yeah, I think in that scene, it's Nick Fury showing up And I think for a general audience member, it's like, oh, hey, that's Samuel L. Jackson. That's cool. And like Nick Fury was a character that's like kind of well known. David Hasselhoff played him in like a TV movie once before that. But the way he talks about it is like, you think you're the only superhero in the world and that kind of thing. Like he starts hinting at the fact that there will be other superheroes and that he's putting together a team of them, right?
Right.
So I think it is like accessible to an audience even if they don't know what's going on in comics or whatever.
I see.
But like this movie, it's just like the Baba Yaga scenes that were actually in the movie didn't make any sense, and then the post-credit scene, just completely nonsense.
Yeah, I was going to say that Baba Yaga has the scene, the exact same scene in the movie, but with Pigman, where she's talking to him off camera, and like that's it. And she tells him to like go do a thing.
Right.
I forget what he says, but
something along those lines. Yeah. But yeah, otherwise, any other Hellboy thoughts, guys? I mean, I feel like I want to point out there is like some undeniably awesome imagery in this movie. I think the image where like Hellboy has the vision of himself on the dragon, like on fire and shit, like that's awesome. That was so cool. It lasts 3 seconds and then it's gone, but it was there and it was cool. And then like the image of like him like charging up the stairs with the sword and the crown of fire and shit, like that's cool. And honestly, maybe I feel like if Hellboy had gone full evil for the movie, I might have liked it more. Just because that's a cool sight to behold,
Yeah. You just want him to have the big horns.
Maybe that's it. No, it's just those big horns that I was a big fan of.
I think somewhere in this movie, there's a good movie. I don't know where, but but I think there's enough ideas. I mean, they have the Omnibuy to pull from, but there's enough in this movie to satiate me. I had enough fun with this movie. I wasn't upset that I spent $13 on a ticket.
All right.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. And I mean, I went in for free, so I guess that's...
What are you even complaining about?
You saw a movie for free. Isn't the fact that it's a movie impressive enough? I was saying this to you the other day.
Yeah, this is John Mulaney bit too, right?
Yeah. There was costumes. They got everyone together. They all had to get up early. Isn't that impressive enough for you?
Fair enough. So, Mike, where's your final thoughts on Hellboy?
I wish this movie had been better because I do really like the comics. I really like the character. Like it was fine enough. Independent of that, it was a fine enough movie. A lot of time. Actually, I'm going to go down a little harder than that. This was certainly a movie. It's one of those things. That line we say a lot here.
Yes.
I come down there probably.
Okay.
I hope it gets better if they do make a second one. I think this bombed though, right?
It bombed, man. It bombed big time. Did not do well at the box office, which it had a budget of $50 million, so I think it'll make back its money. But it did not do well.
Its budget was only $50 million?
Yep.
Wow.
About $50 million.
It shows.
But yeah, it bombed at the box office. Got a terrible critical reaction. I think it has like a 12% or something on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
It's like 15 last time I looked.
All right. I mean, okay. You don't have to defend this movie anymore, Kyle. We're wrapping up.
Give it its credit.
But yeah, so it did not do well critically or financially. And I doubt it has I doubt its prospects overseas are that great. It's not exactly like a 4-quadrant movie.
Yeah.
So I think this is the end of the line for Hellboy. Unless 10 years from now they decide, you know what? Let's let Del Toro make Hellboy 3.
Yeah. Just read the comics, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the comics are supposed to be really great. Mike's a big fan. Or just go rewatch Hellboy 1 and 2. Because, I mean, Hellboy 1, again, I always thought was just fine, but Hellboy 2, fucking dope. It's a great movie. Anyway, so yeah. I think that about wraps up our thoughts on Hellboy 2019. It's not good. It's not good, guys.
Not great.
Okay, so Kyle, where can we find you online this week?
Don't find me online.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you say that every time. Is there anything you want people to find online? Music of some kind that you make, perhaps?
Music that I make? Currently, no. I think I've been saying this the last couple times I've been on here. I am working on new stuff. And when that is out, I will let people find me online.
Okay, fair enough. Mike, where can we find you online?
You can find me at MD FilmBlog on Twitter. And what I really want, forget Hellboy 2, I want a Lobster Johnson movie.
So you're saying you're starting a Kickstarter for Lobster Johnson.
Yes. Kickstarter.com.
/ Lobster Johnson.
Hashtag Lobster Johnson.
Yes, all right, we're making that one happen. All right, and you can find me online at msmithfilmblog on Twitter and all of our podcasts and stuff at FilmBook.com. Thank you so much for listening to FilmBookCast. I'm Mike Smith, that's Mike DeCriscio, and that is Kyle Cullen. Kyle, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, always a good time. Don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and if you want to contact us, hit us up at mikeandmikegotothemovies@gmail.com. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back for another Film Bookcast, and this is a big one. We've been kind of referring to the fact that we're going to do this for this entire episode. Avengers Endgame comes out in 2 weeks. I can't believe it's finally here.
Oh, my God.
And we're doing a whole MCU retrospective in that episode. We're going to talk our personal history with the MCU. We're going to rank our top 5 MCU movies, and then, of course, we'll do a big Avengers Endgame review, which I'm sure will take up the bulk of the episode. So it's going to be a good time. I'm pretty excited about this one. And Mike, you have your ticket ready?
Yes. Saturday, though, so I better flex those unsullied muscles.
Yeah.
Start stretching. I got to start stretching now.
Yeah, I have my ticket for Thursday night. I can't wait. And Kyle, you don't have your ticket yet, but it sounds like you're probably going to go that week, like opening weekend at least.
Yeah, so. I'd like to go Saturday. Probably not going to happen. Might be Sunday.
Okay. All right. Cool. And yeah, we're probably going to have Vin on that episode as well because we wanted to have him back. He was the guest on Avengers Infinity War, so it felt only right. That,
I just hope he watches the whole movie.
What if he leaves before the end credits?
He had to go to the bathroom too bad.
Yeah. That would be unfortunate. But yeah, hopefully he can watch the whole thing this time. That would be great. And hopefully he has his own laptop this time. He's going
to come to my house and sit here for 3 hours and talk to you guys.
That is a real possibility. Just throwing that out there.
I don't mind.
Anyway, you can also check out our next Complete Works, where we're discussing Pay the Ghost, which is a supernatural horror film starring Nicolas Cage and Sarah Wayne Callies, a.k.a. Laurie from The Walking Dead. And it's supposed to be terrible, so we're looking forward to that one. That'll be happening next week. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We are out.
Mike and Mike go to the movies. Mike and Mike go to the movies. Yeah!
You have chosen wisely.
A bunch of sirens going by my house. I'm going to wait until those pass.
I can hear that.
They heard we were R-rated.
I hear that.
They heard we were R-rated. The
podcast police.
Podcast police came out.
No R-rated podcasts in here. It's Missoula, Montana.
This is a Christian town.
Yeah.